Be a part of the best pro wrestling podcast today by supporting the Going In Raw Patreon. You can enjoy access to the live taping of the show, exclusive merchandise, and patron-only episodes, and so much more. Support Going In Raw today. Click the link in the description. Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome to Going In Raw COUNTOUT. A pro wrestling podcast devoted to counting things down here at youtube.com/Stephen Larson. I can no longer say we are the lone podcast that counts down.
That doesn't appear to be the case. There appears to be at least one other.
I believe they're called the Perfect 10 Podcast. Please give them a listen. I have not yet, but I plan to. They seem like really good fellas. They reached out to us on Twitter and said hello, and we're saying hello back.
Yes.
We have company. We are now the only other wrestling podcast that counts down stuff besides the Perfect 10 Podcast.
That we know of.
There
could be more.
We know it.
There could be more.
There's us. There's Perfect 10. As far as I know, that's it.
But there could be more.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here at youtube.com/Stephen Larson, but we're also wherever fine podcasts are available, including iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and soundcloud.com/Stephen Larson, and that is it. Although
We're going to be on Spotify soon, right, Steve?
that's always a possibility. We are on the long, scenic road to Spotify. More of an Autobahn because we go as fast as we want to Spotify. But these days, it kind of feels like we're on a roundabout. You know what a roundabout is? It's just a damn circle. Your car goes around and around until you figure out where you want to go.
I know exactly what it is.
That's where we're at right now with Spotify. We're on a roundabout. Anyways, we're also on Patreon at patreon.com/Stephen Larson, where you can get one of these fancy postcards for $10. It costs us about 15 cents.
But it's signed by us, and you can't put a price tag on that.
That is true. That magic that we sign on there, that is priceless right there, Larson.
Yep.
That's right. And we're also at prowrestlingtees.com/Stephen Larson. I'm sorry, prowrestlingtees.com/Going In Raw.
Yeah.
Where you can get
not these shirts.
Not these shirts, no.
We have shirts of our own. We have a Fun Wrestling logo.
Correct.
Steve W logo.
Correct.
Going In Raw logo.
Correct.
And a Friendo Unified Championship Wrestling logo shirt.
When are we going to get a logo shirt for this show, for COUNTOUT? There's got to be people out there who just like COUNTOUT.
I thought about that, too, getting shirts done for each of our
Dirt
programming.
sheet COUNTOUT? Yeah. Absolutely. Might be kind of cheesy, though. It's not very exciting. Today, we're talking about shocking wrestling injuries.
Yes.
Gross. These are gross injuries.
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty nasty.
Now, we did a thing a little while ago.
About the bloodiest kind of incidents in wrestling history.
But blood happens a lot in wrestling. These are just like, oh, gross.
Yeah, so you won't be seeing Joey Mercury getting his nose busted by a ladder and bleeding everywhere.
Right.
Well, that's an injury, and it is gross.
Yeah.
We kind of already covered that. These are more significant bodily injuries.
Right, exactly. And we can use some of these entries to talk about, other injuries as well. This isn't like, each 10 isn't like comprehensive, but we're going to talk about a couple others within this.
And also, we don't cover any deaths in this episode.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate injury, isn't it? A death, but that's like past injury.
Yes.
It's the different definition.
Yeah, so we're not going to cover that
I'm not even sure
in this
episode.
episode.
To be honest with you guys, I'm not even sure I want to do deaths. We clown a lot on the show. We joke a lot. Nothing funny about somebody dying in the ring.
Nothing funny about it.
No. Although there are I'm pretty sure, are there solidly 10 that are
I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think I did a little
I
bit
can
of
think
research.
of 3.
I know there was in the old timey days, like the collar and elbow days, people were pretty rough back then.
Mm-hmm.
And Meltzer had a great rundown of this old, I forget his name, McDonough or something like that, wrestler from the old timey days. And the newspapers said that he ended up killing 3 or 4 people in the ring.
Wow.
Back then, they didn't give a fuck, man. It was crazy. But yeah, I know I can think of a small handful, and everybody knows them.
Yeah.
But even if there were 10, that's a really grim subject to talk about.
Yeah.
Injuries is one thing, and then the top couple here are super sad.
Yeah.
But let's just kick this off with something that's kind of a bit on the lighter side.
Yeah.
Number 10.
10.
John Cena's nose.
So this happened.
Cena's nose.
This happened on July 27th, 2015, during an episode of Raw, where John Cena defended his U.S. title against Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
And during the match, they're going back and forth. And Seth delivers a running knee to Cena's face.
Yeah.
And instantly, you pretty much knew that something went wrong with the move.
His nose looked like it was made out of some sort of rubbery
It looked like it was
substance.
over here.
Yeah. Oh, God. It was
Yeah,
gross.
like the bridge of his nose was more or less on his cheek.
So we watched pretty much every one of these except you saw a still from number 1.
That was enough.
I didn't even. I'll be honest with you, dude. I'm 38 years old. Back when I was like in my 20s, I could totally watch like Gore Gallery and all that kind of stuff, and watch like beheadings and stuff. I can't watch some of like the number 1. I couldn't watch. I was like, I can't do that.
The still I saw was enough.
Yeah, that's not good. But we know all the circumstances and what happened, so we don't need to be that educated on it. Anyways, John Cena's nose. So Seth Rollins ran his knee right into John Cena's nose.
face.
Yeah.
John Cena, he would take a moment to collect himself because his nose was on the wrong side of his face.
Correct.
But he would continue wrestling and would win the match.
Lol, John Cena wins.
Super Cena.
Yeah.
The injury did force Cena out of action for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was just out of in-ring action for a few weeks, but I think he came back on TV pretty quickly.
Yeah, I seem to remember that too.
And then he faced Seth Rollins at SummerSlam 2015, where
Mm-hmm.
he lost the U.S. title to Seth Rollins thanks to the help of Jon Stewart.
Which was oddly one of the best celebrity encounters. There's a top 10 for you. That was one of the best celebrity encounters that we've seen.
And it was a really good match, too.
Yeah, it was a really good match. And it was with the help of Jon Stewart. But at the same time, who doesn't love Jon Stewart?
I know.
He's fantastic.
He's the best.
I am totally fine with him getting involved in any way, shape, or fashion with wrestling. In fact, it was the first time he had quit The Daily Show.
Yeah.
It was the first time he had shown up, like, I think on TV or something like that.
That sounds right.
Since then. So it was great. I think his kid was there, too. His kid got to see him turn heel, basically.
Yeah.
Which is so much fun.
I know.
That's great.
It was a lot of fun. So Seth Rollins was on Talk is Jericho
Talk is Jericho, baby.
with
Sorry.
Chris Jericho and talked about this spot where he destroyed John Cena's nose.
John
This is what he had
Cena's
to
nose.
say. He said, "That was really bad. Dude, he looked gnarly. I felt so bad. It was just a knee. We were trading shots, and I threw a high knee just for some separation so we could get to whatever the next thing we were doing was. And for whatever reason, look, John will be the first guy to admit he's a clumsy fella."
Here's where Seth starts putting it on John.
I know. He's not a graceful individual. When he's not sure about stuff for his own protection, a lot of times he'll put his body into whatever you're doing. When you're throwing punches at him or forearms, he leans a little bit. Seth continues. The timing of it was, call it perfect or imperfect, whatever you want. And I wear knee pads, too, a pretty thick knee pad, and I felt that thing, heard it through the nose. Just a pop and a crunch. He went down, and I was like, oh no, this is no good.
Yeah. No, it is no good, Seth Rollins. That looked gnarly. If you can like feel that or hear it, like
I know, through your knee.
Because he does. He wears like pillow-sized knee pads. They're ridiculous. And that's not good. And that's super dangerous because, man, if like a chunk of bone, like it's legitimate. I could have a chunk of bone could fly from your nose and get in your brain, you die.
I know.
Like that's like a one-punch thing. Like people have died from that before.
Yeah.
Luckily,
That didn't happen in this case.
that didn't happen.
But this incident drew the ire of one Bret Hart.
Yeah, this began the Bret Hart sort of running feud, one-sided feud with Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
Where he called him
dangerous.
Oh yeah, that's
Didn't
Seth
he
Rollins.
say he was going to kill someone in the ring or something like that?
They better stop him before he kills someone.
Did he say something like that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, he did. And then, of course, but it kind of kicked off like a string of bad luck for Seth Rollins.
It was the injury to Sting during his
bomb.
match with Seth, and then Seth blew out his knee that November.
Yeah.
And then last summer at SummerSlam, he did another buckle bomb to Finn Balor on the barricade. Finn kind of got his elbow caught and tore up his shoulder.
Finished the match, won the match, then had to hand over
Vacate.
the title.
Yeah.
And we're wondering if he's going to be back at WrestleMania or Raw, or is Finn going to be back? But Bret Hart started calling out Seth Rollins, and anytime somebody got hurt under Seth Rollins in a Seth Rollins match, which seemed to be like in a short period of time, like he was totally fine for a very long period of time, like no injuries, and then he had a couple in a row, which all just seemed honestly like they seem to be kind of coincidental. Like the Sting one, if you take each one individually in a vacuum, they are like kind of okay, well it makes sense. Like the Cena thing seemed like such a fluke, and then you get the Sting thing, and it's like well. He's old, and what Foley said or Sting said or something like that when you're old, the first thing you go is your neck.
Yeah, that's what Foley said. And then Sting made it seem like he was just really trying to sell for Seth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ugh. Yeesh. Anyways. So yeah, John Cena's nose. Now he's fine. I do remember though, like that night on WWE.com, they had like a gnarly black and white photo.
We used for a thumbnail.
It was beautiful. Oh, that's right, we did.
Yep.
It was beautiful.
Maybe we'll use it for the thumbnail for this video.
Oh, there you go. That's good because it's been. We use it for a thumbnail. What do we use it for a thumbnail for?
Either episode of Going in Raw, or for Going in Raw.
July of 2015.
Yeah, we were doing Going in Raw then.
We were doing it weekly or monthly? Weekly? Had to have been weekly.
I don't know if we were doing it weekly then. I remember we used it for a thumbnail for something.
No, I think you're right about that. I just don't remember what we used it for because that was almost it was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
All right, number 9.
9.
Ooh, Chavo Guerrero's concussion.
Yeah.
This I didn't know this until we started researching this, that Billy Kidman had a problem with that shooting star press of his.
Yeah, I didn't remember any issues with him doing it in WCW.
Mm-hmm.
But in this match, if you watch the video, he kind of jumps off the top turnbuckle and kind of goes, I don't know, it's not straight overhead.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of goes diagonal somewhat.
Yeah.
Leading him, when he hits the shooting star press,
Mm-hmm.
to drop a knee directly onto Chavo Guerrero's head.
Which then goes crashing because Chavo's kind of up. You know, you do the thing where you brace for it and your head goes kind of up. So the knee hits head and then the head slam the mat.
Yeah.
And his muscles all tense up like this.
Yeah, he seizes up. He's already in that kind of posture because it almost looks like the guy on the ground is kind of trying to catch the other person.
Yeah.
So he's already in kind of this position. And then he just seizes up. All his muscles get stiff.
Yeah.
Which is usually not a good thing.
Yeah. He was out for a couple minutes, apparently. Now, we get some of this from, so Brian Alvarez from Wrestling Observer wrote up a thing. And according to him, he had to wait like a couple days to write it up because he was so pissed off that they were still letting Kidman do that. Because he said, according to Brian Alvarez, like there had been multiple injuries thanks to to Kidman's moonsault, and he said shooting star press. Sorry, if he kept on, he was like, well, if he keeps on doing this, why does he still have a job?
I know,
or even just why are they still letting him do that?
Keep him from doing the move. I know,
because this was pretty nasty. It says, let's see here. Now there is some sort of we'll link to the Wrestling Observer article if we can, or the Cage Side Seats has a little write-up here about it. But it seemed like this was definitely a severe concussion. He was out for like 2 months.
Yeah. According to Irv Muchnick, I guess he's a wrestling blogger, following the Chris Benoit tragedy, Chris Benoit's father spoke to Chavo Guerrero about CTE and post-concussion syndrome.
Yeah, because they had donated Benoit's brain to Chris Nowinski's.
Yeah. And at the time, Chavo kind of was pessimistic about CTE aspects of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, said he had suffered a concussion that caused bleeding on his brain.
Yeah.
And Muchnick speculated, or Chris Benoit's father speculated, I think it was Muchnick, that Chavo was referring to this concussion. Which, if that's true, that's nuts.
That's nasty. That's bleeding on the brain. That's not good.
It's not good.
No, not at all.
Most recently, remember not that long ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer, Anthony Bowens, I believe was his name, was in a tag match against the Authors of Pain, and his partner got powerbombed into him, and his partner's elbow hit Anthony Bowens in the head, and he got concussed, and he seemed like he kind of lost control of his extremities to a certain extent.
Yeah, that looked nasty too.
Yeah.
Concussions are nothing to mess with.
No. But head injuries in total are nothing to mess with.
But the link there to the Cage Side Seats thing is pretty interesting because it, I love the WWE and everything, but they have sort of at best kind of a sketchy history in terms of like the concussion thing. And granted, look, a lot of people didn't know. Nobody really knew.
It really hasn't been to the last probably 10 years.
Right, yeah.
There's been enough research.
God, even more like recent than that, has anybody really taken that kind of stuff seriously? Because it's like, thank goodness now they stopped doing unprotected. They stopped doing headshots with chairs, unprotected. So they have the wellness policy thing. They're very strict about concussions. Look at Daniel Bryan now.
Yeah.
But there is that part of me that's like, when we watch pay-per-views from even 2009, which granted was 8 years ago. Now it's 8 years ago, but I feel like, man, I'm not just calling out WWE, NFL. You sort of just get the idea that they probably knew a bit more.
They just put the business before the well-being of their athletes.
Yeah.
Potentially.
And I don't know. That's just one of those things where it's just kind of a bummer. And it's like, well, you got to take the good with the bad, I guess.
I found the Cena thumb.
Yeah.
It was from our SummerSlam 2015 predictions video.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
I was determined to find it.
Well, I might use it again. All right, so number 8. Mick Foley's ear.
Yeah.
Ew.
This took place March 16th, 1994, while WCW was on tour in Europe. Specifically, this match happened in Munich, Germany.
Yeah. Now, this was in the midst of Foley and Vader had... And it always cracks me up that it was in WCW because you just think
they had this brutal feud.
A brutal, deathmatch-esque feud in WCW in the early 90s.
Yeah, that match at Halloween Havoc.
Yeah. It was just the juxtaposition. I brought this up last time we talked about it. The juxtaposition between the family-friendly WCW crowd and then the cheesy Halloween Havoc set.
I know, and these two guys literally beating the hell out of each other.
Just going to town on each other is just bizarre.
I have a list here of some of the other injuries beyond his ear that Foley suffered during his feud with Vader.
Jeez,
let's go through
just during this feud.
I'm sure this is a abridged list as well. There's a short list.
I know, exactly.
2 broken noses. Broke his nose twice.
God.
He dislocated his jaw. Apparently, the nose and the jaw was all happened in one match. I think Foley had to get 30 stitches from one encounter, and then he, after Vader powerbombed him on the concrete, he suffered a severe concussion that left him with short-term memory loss.
Couldn't do that, man.
No.
Do that. Anyways, let's talk about the ear.
Yeah, so Foley, I guess, used to do the spot where you get his head trapped between the ropes.
Called the hangman.
Yeah.
But there's 2 problems here.
Yeah, according to Foley, WCW didn't use ring ropes, I guess, like WWE does or did, but instead used elevator cable wrapped in rubber.
Oh, God.
And I guess that makes it harder for the wrestlers to work their way out of the ropes.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
No. And at this show, I guess Too Cold Scorpio was in one of the earlier matches and complained that the ropes were too loose.
Yeah.
And so the people ringside tighten the ropes.
Yeah, so that would make it even more difficult.
Yeah. So Foley did the move, got his head trapped in the ropes, and seemed, based on his own account, I think in his book, his first book.
Yeah.
He spends a lot of time talking about this incident.
He started to black out.
Yeah. Because he said it was cutting off the blood flow because it was so tight. So he's trying to pry himself free, and we watched a video of this before we started, and the refs over there trying to get him out. And he finally gets out, and he says he looks down, and he says that blood was literally pouring out of his ear. And apparently he'd done this spot before and had to get stitches in his ear, but he said it was mostly cartilage, so it never really bled a lot.
Yeah.
He said this time there's just blood pouring out.
If you look at so there's some crappy video online of this, and if you look at the video, him coming out of the ropes, him coming out of the hangman it looks very violent.
Yeah.
It's very fast, it's very violent.
Yeah.
So yeah, he said blood was literally pouring out of my ear. Then Foley gets back in, throws a forearm at Vader, and when he threw the forearm, his ear flew off.
Yes.
The ref picked up the ear, gave it to the ring announcer, who, if that was me, I'd no sell it. I'd be like, I don't know. What the fuck
apparently, the ring announcer took it backstage and brought it to the attention that he had to Ric Flair, that he had Mick Foley's ear, and Flair either told the ring announcer to put it on ice or brought ice to the ring announcer to try to find a way to reattach Mick Foley's ear after the match, because the match continued.
Yeah, the match kept on going.
Yeah, they didn't stop the match.
No. Who went over in that match?
I don't know.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know. You think? I don't know. I mean, guy loses his ear. You think he's going to lose the match, but you never know.
Never know. It's Foley.
I have no idea.
But he had to have surgery to get the ear even situated well enough so they could potentially reattach it.
Yeah, and it went down in lore. Went down in Foley's lore. You look at it, he proudly shows it off with his fresh haircut a couple weeks back on Raw.
Yeah,
and it just added to the crazy shit that Foley did.
The hardcore legend.
Added to the legend of the hardcore legend. Exactly.
Yep.
So that takes us to number 7.
Talking
about Vader.
Yeah.
Vader's eyeball.
Yeah. So in the early 90s, I've seen multiple years for this incident, so I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay.
There was a All Japan Pro Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling crossover event. And Vader had a match against Stan Hansen.
Two of the stiffest workers, maybe even the two stiffest workers in the history of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
They are high up there.
Yes. Stan Hansen started the match out by hitting Vader over the head with a cowbell.
Yeah.
He used to carry a cowbell on a rope to the ring.
Yeah.
And busted Vader open and broke his nose.
That's how the match started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Vader, according to Vader, after he kind of collected himself, the match started. And there was a flurry of punches. And at some point during that flurry, Hansen inadvertently stuck his thumb in Vader's right eye and popped his eyeball out.
Oh, God.
There's video of this if you want to see it.
Yeah, there is. The video isn't as like... It's not like Hostile, It's not like a horror movie or something. But there's something very unsettling about the fact that it's real, And you see this sort of bulge because it happens very quickly. You just sort of see this bulge coming out here, and that's his eyeball. And then if you look closely, you can kind of see, like, when the video's playing, you can kind of see how wonky his eye looks inside there. Like, you can kind of tell. I like this. Vader's response, apparently, according to Vader, was, "Stan, you popped my eye out, you motherfucker."
And they just pushed it back in.
And then he just popped it back in. Vader removed his mask.
They removed his mask so he can pop his eyeball back in.
Yeah.
And then at some point in the future, he had to have surgery to put a plate in under that eye.
Yeah, but he did continue the match.
Yes, match didn't stop.
Do we know who went over in that match?
It was a no contest.
No contest. That's good.
Nobody won.
Nobody won. Listen, baby, this is what you're gonna do, Stan Hansen. You're gonna poke Vader's eye out. We're gonna try something new here, baby.
See, I saw stills of that, but I couldn't. I'm not gonna watch that video.
I tried. No, I tried a while ago. It is so underwhelming. It is very underwhelming. Like, you cannot tell.
Oh, okay.
It's because largely it's the quality of the video itself. You just can't tell. So it's not like it isn't. Like, I think even the camera angle, like, kind of, because it's on Stan Hansen, and then it's like,
but kind of hides the.
And it's also, I think it's zoomed and handheld.
Yeah.
And so you can't really tell what's going on. He just sort of goes like this, and then that's it. But you can't even see really what's going on.
Yeah.
Number 6. Sabu's bicep.
Okay, this took place August 9th, 1997, ECW's Born to be Wired event.
Born to be Wired.
The main event of which was Sabu.
Yes, Sabu.
Against Terry Funk. In a barbed wire match for the ECW Championship.
Oh, sure.
So no ropes. Instead of ropes, barbed wire.
What did I say when I was watching this video with you? They're just doing too much.
Yeah.
Like, this is barbed wire. Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
This is no good.
It's no good. So about 10 minutes into the match, of a 25-minute match.
Yeah.
Sabu attempts his air Sabu maneuver where he puts a chair down and jumps off the chair into somebody. Funk is against one of the in the corner.
Post, yeah, the ring post.
So as Sabu is leaping towards him, Funk moves out of the way. So Sabu lands directly into the corner and gets kind of like entangled in the barbed wire a little bit. Falls to the ground. As he falls to the ground, a hunk of barbed wire slices the shit out of the inside of his bicep here.
Yeah.
And so he's on the ground looking at it. He's like, "Oh shit!" He starts yelling at Bill Alfonso.
Yeah.
And showing him what's going on. And Bill Alfonso runs to the back real fast. And Sabu's there putting pressure on his arm. Seems really irritated. He seems mad about what happened
with it.
About what's going on.
Yeah.
And then Alfonso comes back out maybe around 45 seconds later, maybe a minute, with a roll of tape. So Sabu gets the tape, tries taping his wound together. And while he's starting to do the tape job, Funk comes up, picks him up off the ground, because all the while Sabu's waiting for the tape, Funk sets up 2 folding chairs. So you have Sabu trying to tape his arm up.
Yeah.
Funk picks him up, does a neck breaker through the chairs, and the whole time, Sabu doesn't sell at all. He's just there taping his arm up the whole time. The whole time.
Oh, yeah, Terry Funk is crazy.
And so I think Sabu probably takes a minute and a half taping his arm up, from about here all the way down below his elbow. And manages to tape it up well enough so he can finish the match. He goes another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
The match finishes with both Funk and Sabu so entangled in wire that there's this really awkward cover where it just looks like Sabu has barbed wire across Funk's head or something and gets the pinfall victory. And then afterwards, there's a bunch of people come out, try to get them out of the barbed wire without slicing them up even further. But it's a brutal match.
And they didn't do barbed wire again.
No, Heyman said he wasn't going to do any more barbed wire matches after that.
No more of that. Number 5. Stone Cold bruises his spinal cord.
Yeah, there have been plenty of neck injuries in the history of wrestling. The Austin one, historically speaking, might be the most important because he was pretty close to being paralyzed that day by all accounts. Took place in a match against Owen Hart at SummerSlam 1997. Owen Hart, they did a spot where Austin gets him up in kind of a tombstone piledriver position.
Right.
Owens reverses it, but rather than landing on his knees like the Undertaker does for a tombstone, he lands on his butt.
Yeah.
And Stone Cold said there's probably a good 3 to 6 inches of his head sticking out below Owens' butt. So that took the brunt of the impact.
Yeah.
Stone Cold was temporarily paralyzed, but he was booked to win the match.
I like that your notes here says he was temporarily paralyzed, but since he was due to win the match, managed to roll up Owens. Like that's like, oh, I'm paralyzed, but I got to win this match, so I'm going to stop being paralyzed.
I know,
now.
pretty much.
But no, it was what they call a stinger, right? Yeah. And so he lost sensation in his arms, and then but it was temporary. Like it says here, it was temporary. Then he got up with whatever power he had, as Owen was sort of preening for the crowd a little bit. Just to give him some time. Austin sort of, and you can see the video of it. He just sort of grabs him by the thigh a little bit, which is as high up as he can reach.
Yeah.
And he does that, and Owen Hart just falls back and gets the roll up, and then they walk him out of there. And after the fact, the Stone Cold had said, there was no way they were gonna bring in the EMTs or a stretcher. He said that would have killed my character essentially. And so they did walk him back, and he said, I just remember sitting on the bench, and he said, my delts, which you said are like shoulders?
I think they're shoulder muscles, yeah.
He said they were on fire, and they were on fire for about
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, and then he said just sort of turned into an itch, and then it was gone. But, apparently, Stone Cold had some like heavy resentments towards Owen after that, largely because he only called him like one time.
Yeah,
and
to apologize,
Man, if I almost paralyzed somebody, I'd be calling him 25 times. And even Brett said, I told Owen, you need to call him. And he said he just forgot.
Yeah, Brett said once Owen left the arena, he forgot about wrestling.
Yeah, so
Stone Cold was out of action for several months following the injury.
It kind of, he was super hot at the time.
Yeah.
But his return, like how they booked his return, and the fact that he came back sort of quicker than probably normal than they had originally thought he was going to be, and the fact that they used that and had his character kind of defy all the doctors, and they wrote that into storyline, only added more fuel to his particular fire.
Yeah. And then does he credit, or is it kind of just generally credited this injury? He had to change his style. He couldn't.
Yeah, no, it's because of this.
Yeah, he couldn't wrestle a technical style like he used to. He had to brawl a lot more.
The crazy thing is, so he had neck issues before this, and it's just odd to me that everybody knows that. Like, if you're Owen, wouldn't you be extra careful and make sure that you're doing like a tombstone and not a sit down? Like, wouldn't that be always on your mind? Let me predict. For example, if you're taking a Styles Clash, if I'm AJ Styles, and I guarantee he probably does this. He probably doesn't have to do it with like Cena, but he said, hey, head up.
Yeah.
Like
before the match starts, when you're at gorilla position, before you go out, to say, hey, just remember, head up.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even before you do the move.
Even before you do the move is what I'm thinking. Yeah. It's like, hey, put your head up.
Or don't tuck.
Yeah, don't tuck. And so I would have just thought that, that would just sort of be extra on the mind. But, you're out there in front of 15,000 people. I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah,
so
I don't know either.
Who knows? But, yeah, this ended up, Austin's career had been skyrocketing, and it did even more so after this. Of course, it became the biggest draw in the history of the business.
Yeah, but he's still plagued by neck injuries the rest of his career,
and that ended up retiring him early, because it was only a couple of years later that he had to retire. It was 2002.
Yeah. So about 5 years later.
Yeah. Number 4, New Jack's head injury. Oh,
yeah, this is pretty bad. This incident took place on March 12th, 2000 during the Living Dangerously pay-per-view, ECW, which took place in Danbury, Connecticut.
And it was New Jack versus Vic Grimes. Was this actually a scaffold match?
I believe so.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, because to double check this, I thought they just ended up going up high.
Oh, maybe.
And then the XPW one was an actual
that was
scaffold
definitely a
match.
scaffold
That was a
match.
scaffold match. But in essence, they were very high up in the air on a platform.
Yeah, New Jack said about 20 feet.
Okay, about 20 feet up. And there's a brutal New Jack. New Jack is great for shoot interviews, by the way. There's a brutal shoot interview with New Jack where he describes everything that happens. But basically, they get up there, and Vic Grimes, according to New Jack, Vic Grimes started showing some reluctance or expressing some reluctance to New Jack about doing the spot where they're supposed to fall off. They're both supposed to fall off this thing in unison. And New Jack basically was like, I don't really care. We're going to do this. And he essentially leapt off with Vic Grimes. He basically grabbed onto him and said, we're going to go do this now. And probably because there is a bit of lack of coordination there. I mean, I'm not sure if there's like a way that you can guarantee some safety here. I don't know.
Well, I mean, your target is 2 tables.
Yeah. I would think that if both people are on the same page, you have a better chance at not cracking somebody's head open.
That is definitely true.
Right. As opposed to, hey, Larson, come on, let's go. And then, you're fucked. But that's what happened. And
near as all I could tell, it was some sort of scaffolding they jumped off. I don't know if it was a scaffold match.
Okay. And so you can watch video of this. They come off of it and they sort of like skip off it a little bit.
One table,
yeah,
and then they kind of slide off, and it looks like New Jack's on the bottom. He hits the concrete, and then Grimes kind of topples over him, lands on his head.
And Grimes is a big dude.
Yes. Yeah. Slamming New Jack's head against the concrete. Yeah. According to New Jack, the impact of his head hitting the concrete cracked his skull.
The second part is disgusting.
And led to spinal fluid coming out of his nose. Oh. And he suffered nerve damage in his eyes, leading to blindness. In his eye, leading to blindness in his right eye. He also said he suffers from headaches and other head-related
problems.
Injuries, yes.
Problems.
Maladies, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's just knowing what happens here, knowing that the skull gets cracked and then spinal fluid comes through his sinuses. Oh, God, that's so gross.
It's gross.
It's so nasty. The XPW, which was a promotion called Extreme Pro Wrestling out of L.A.
Yes.
Which we had the pleasure of visiting.
We'll talk about that in the next entry.
The next entry. Anyways, they were just basically an ECW wannabe. Like, they took all the salaciousness of ECW and completely multiplied that by like 1,000.
Yes.
Like, they had pornographers. And so, but very much like trying to emulate ECW.
Yeah.
Like they tried to, I remember we were there at the ECW pay-per-view they did in Los Angeles.
They did some sort of invasion, yeah.
Like an invasion, but it wasn't like a planned thing. I don't think Heyman wanted anything to do with these guys. And so they just like bought seats kind of nearby and then kind of
it was a front row.
It was a front row, yeah. And started a little bit of shit. And I remember this because we were kind of waiting for that to happen because we saw them. And then as soon as one guy like breathed heavy, the entire ECW locker room came out and basically beat the crap out of them, and they were escorted out. Mm-hmm. And so that was XPW for you. And they were actually around for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Their owner, Rob Black, ended up getting sent up for, I forget what exactly. I want to say like tax evasion or something like that, but I forget what it was. But he ended up going to like jail or some crap. But anyways, XPW ended up capitalizing on the New Jack Vic Grimes feud. They brought it back to life in 2001. And again, they did some more extreme shit. There was a tag match where New Jack and Messiah teamed up again. No, New Jack and Supreme teamed up against Messiah and Vic Grimes. And there was XPW didn't know how to do fire table spots.
No, we'll get to that in next entry.
I know, but
you need to
kick it off.
We need to talk about that here, yeah.
Because they lit this table on fire, used way too much gas or whatever. Lighter fluid, sorry, yeah. And New Jack ended up getting lit on fire, and he ran around for like 10 seconds on fire.
Yeah.
And then they had a scaffold match in February of 2002 where Vic Grimes damn near died. New Jack throws him off. There's like a massive like stack of tables all stacked up.
I believe there was 12.
Ready to be fallen through.
Yeah.
If Vic Grimes had if they had done a spot simply where maybe he's hanging from the scaffold.
And just falls, yeah.
And just falls straight down. But New Jack tosses him. And, you know, I'm not just putting this on New Jack. Vic Grimes ran into the fall. He crashed through like one or two of the tables, but ended up sliding off, and then like
his foot or ankle hits the ring ropes and breaks his ankle.
And he bounces up, and then he comes crashing down. But shit, if that was his neck or whatever.
Oh, I know.
Like,
or if he had fallen 2 feet
further
forward, he would have fallen straight to the mat outside.
Yeah, exactly. And so these were the kind of things that XPW do, and we're going to get to more of that in the next entry. But so we didn't go to that one.
No.
Because
of the next entry.
Well, we had a friend at that scaffold match, and he was like, yeah, dude, it was fucked up. I'm not doing that again. Number 3. Supreme in EXPW.
Yeah. So this particular incident took place July 7th, 2001 at the LA Olympic Auditorium for an event called XPW Rapture. Supreme took on Chaos in a death match.
Yeah, Chaos is actually still around. I haven't really seen much of Supreme. Like, I kind of did a little bit of research, see if these guys are still doing. Chaos is still doing stuff.
Wasn't Supreme in the news the last couple of years for something?
Maybe.
I thought
that might sound.
I did see Supreme at a sandwich place in Hollywood a couple of years after this incident.
Really? That's interesting. So he was okay.
Yeah.
But basically Supreme in Chaos, and then there was like the Messiah. They actually had some characters who were you can kind of latch onto.
Yeah,
like, they had some decent characters. Messiah I thought was cool, and he went crazy because they cut off his thumbs.
But in this match, beyond the spot we're going to talk about specifically, there was this other spot. There's two incidences in this match that I'll never forget.
We were there.
Yeah.
By the way, we were
there. We were there. We were maybe 6 rows back from the ring. So, fluorescent tubing, I think, was starting to become in vogue during this time in hardcore matches.
Yeah.
In 2001.
Yeah.
So there's this spot. You know, it's a death match. So they have weapons all around the ring and stuff.
Yeah.
And so both Supreme and Chaos produce fluorescent tubes. So they're in the middle of the ring, and they're holding them like lightsabers or swords.
Yeah.
And then they start like dueling. And the two tubes hit together, and a shard about that big goes flying. About that big with a huge jagged edge. Yeah. Goes flying into the crowd.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it landed where nobody was sitting. Because it was maybe 15, 20 feet away from where we were.
Yeah.
So I remember following that the whole way. I didn't want that coming anywhere near us.
Yeah.
But because it was on a pretty high arc. If that was on a flatter trajectory.
Oh, yeah.
Where someone was sitting.
Oh, yeah.
Someone got fucked up. Bad.
Yeah. So then let's talk about the
finish of the match.
Veronica Kane, who I think was a porno actress as well. Like, she doubled, I think, because I know there was a Lizzie Borden. She was a porno actress. I'm pretty sure Veronica Kane was too. She was sort of the manager of a faction that was battling Supreme, and so she was the one
trusted with
putting. Trusted. I'm just gonna say tasked.
Well, they trusted her to do it right. Okay, sorry.
I don't know. I think they just tasked her with doing it.
That's the better.
Assuming she understood that
You're correct.
and lighting fluid.
You're correct. Okay.
Produce,
tasked.
Yeah.
With the duty of getting the table ready for Supreme to go through it. So that means putting lighter fluid on it, not too much, enough to kind of put a little bit of fire on top of the table. So when the person goes through it, the fire is more or less extinguished.
Yeah.
So, anyways, she puts a bunch of lighter fluid on, or some. Won't light.
Yeah.
So what does she do?
She just douses more lighter fluid onto it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, I remember watching that.
I know.
And it was like she was squeezing the life out of it so much so that like the air, you can hear it come out along with the light. It was.
I know. And you could see the lighter fluid drip off the table.
Yes. It was like pooling.
Yeah.
It was pooling.
So there's, granted, it's not like literal pool, but, if to do it right, you're supposed to get a thin layer. This is like 10 times that.
Yeah.
However, however much lighter fluid could be contained on a flat surface, this table had that much lighter fluid. It was a lot. So they light the lighter fluid. Table goes up.
Yeah.
And are we sure it was the Gigolo.
I don't know, but I'm sure that Gigolo was in
Granted, this was 16 years ago.
We are going by memory on this. Now there is video of this on YouTube.
Yeah, and I can't tell based on that video. I mean, I couldn't
either.
I couldn't tell you what the Gigolo looked like now, anyways. I just remember he had Gigolo on the back of his shorts.
Yeah. And then we saw him we were front row, locally here.
Yeah,
for one of
probably
his
about
matches.
4 or 5 years before this.
Yeah. Anyways, one of the people.
It might have been him, might not. We don't
might
remember.
have been Gigolo, might not have been. Put Supreme position. So Supreme was on the top turnbuckle.
Yeah.
And Gigolo did that to him. Supreme goes into the table, and that sumbitch goes up, and Supreme gets up.
Rather than the fire going out due to the impact, Supreme is engulfed in flames.
Yeah. And of course he's panicking because he's engulfed in flames. He drops down, gets out of the ring,
and starts running around the ringside area. And then we just watched the video before we started, and there is, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 security people chasing after him.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy with a fire extinguisher who goes in the ring and puts out the table.
Yeah. And I remember, it's funny because you can't really tell in the video. I just remember them seeming kind of I don't know. I got the impression, and this is from my memory. I have no idea if this is true. From my memory, and maybe this is just because I'm God, in my mind you have more of a sense of urgency than is even possible.
Yes.
But I remember there being kind of a lackadaisical attitude about putting out Supreme. Especially because he's putting on the table, let's just make sure this is okay. And then eventually he then he takes his break, and then he comes back and he puts out Supreme.
Well, watching the video, the guy with the fire extinguisher, he gets in the ring. He starts in one position, and then he moves.
Yeah. And I think that's what it was. It was why is he taking so long doing this? There's literally a man on fire. I'll just tell you this. I distinctly remember feeling that I was about to watch a guy die. That was my feeling. I was oh my God, I'm about to watch. There's that thing where shit seems too real all of a sudden.
I know.
It's kind of like 9/11 when you're watching on TV. At the time, you're that's weird.
Well, then it seemed like everything's kind of moving slower.
Yes, exactly. And I do also definitely remember. So they did put out Supreme. He did live. He was very burnt.
Yes.
I remember the EMTs tending him, and I do remember because we were kind of out of sight of the EMTs. You can sort of see.
We were on the opposite side of the entrance ramp.
And so I do remember though when they carted him off on the stretcher, or whatever it was. He sort of does this, and then you see flesh sort of coming and hanging just loosey goosey on his arm. Oh, it was nasty.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, that was one of the gnarliest live, probably the gnarliest live show I've been to.
Oh, yeah.
It's not every day you see a guy almost die. Number 2. Sid's leg. Ooh, I'm pretty sure most of you have probably seen at least a still of this, if not the actual video. So this took place on January 14th, 2001 at the WCW Sin pay-per-view. This is 2 months before WCW got bought out by the WWF. So it was around 2. There was 2 pay-per-views after this. This was the main event was a 4 corners match for the WCW Heavyweight Championship, which was carried at the time by Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, you fat bastard. Jeff Jarrett was also in the match, and Sid, and advertised a mystery opponent for this match. Who would be the mystery opponent? We all kind of figured it'd be an old timer, and it turned out to be right. But we'll get to that in a second. So during the match, Sid came out on fire. So the mystery opponent didn't come out till the very end.
Yeah.
So it was just Sid, Jeff Jarrett, and Scott Steiner who were in cahoots in some manner. I don't know. I'd completely tuned out of WCW by this time. But Jeff Jarrett was a heel, I think always. Scott Steiner was definitely a heel at this point. And so Sid was a face.
Yeah, he was the new babyface in town.
He was the new babyface in town. So after Sid started off pretty hot against the heels, Steiner and Jarrett, the numbers were too great. It was like Butch Bacon in there.
Yeah.
Numbers were too great. And so they swarmed him. Sid started mounting a comeback. And part of that comeback was he got up on the second rope level turn on the corner turnbuckle and came off of it to try to do a double X handle to Steiner. Well, as he did that, one leg came down before the other, and snapped.
Yes.
Both his tibia and his fibula.
Yeah. Was it a compound fracture?
Which one is a compound fracture?
When the bone sticks out through the skin.
Yes.
Okay.
They said that bone did stick out through the skin.
So he's writhing on the ground with the bottom half of his leg going the wrong way.
Now, here's the thing. It's comical because of how they just continued on with the booking of the show.
I know.
Because he's writhing in pain on the ground.
And literally the bottom half of his leg is about 45 degrees off from where it should be.
It's 45 degrees wrong.
Yeah.
And then Steiner lays into him a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
And then Flair's music, Flair was the CEO at the time.
Yeah.
His music kicks in, but he doesn't come out. Instead, it's mystery opponent.
Yeah, who comes down and then starts beating up on Sid
Well, hold on
more.
a second.
Oh,
Let's talk about that. So it's a
yeah.
dude. He's got sort of like a black jumpsuit with what looks like white straps, almost like an asylum jacket, like a straight jacket.
Yeah.
He looks portly.
Yeah.
He's got a hockey mask on with some like black tape. It looks so stitched together. Like whoever put together the Shockmaster's outfit, I will almost guarantee put together this.
Yeah.
It looks so thrown together and stitched together and stupid.
Yes.
I mean, it basically looks stupid.
It did look stupid.
And he moseys down.
Yeah.
This mystery guy moseys on down. Meanwhile, Sid has like half a leg missing.
I know.
He comes down, starts acting like he's kicking Sid. And
A couple times
you see Sid. And so the original idea of this was this mystery opponent was supposed to be in cahoots with Steiner and Jarrett. Sid was supposed to get the upper hand on them. Mystery opponent is introduced. He comes down and helps Steiner pick up the victory. But that's all for naught because Sid is on the ground with half his leg shredded.
Yeah.
And so mystery opponent comes down, gives a couple of half-hearted kicks to Sid. Steiner then launches himself at Sid to beat him up a little bit more and goes for the pin, holding up his good leg, which probably still killed his other leg.
I know.
And got the pin. Mystery opponent unmasks, and it's fucking Animal from the Road Warriors.
I know. So all the heels celebrate while the medical staff attends to Sid.
And you just see, like, every time it cuts back to, like, Sid on the ground, he's, like, just in the most earnest way possible, like, giving instructions to the ref. Like, well, you have no idea what he's saying. It was probably along the lines of, I'm fucked.
I know. My leg is destroyed.
This is my last match. I'm not doing this
Will I be
anymore.
able to play softball next month?
Exactly. Oh, it was so bad because what a waste. Like,
I know.
It's literally like 60 to 70 days out from WCW literally being no more, being bought by the WWF and existing only in the WWF Universe's storyline.
I know. And according to Sid, he didn't even want to do that spot.
He didn't even want to do that spot. And he sued WCW because he said he was coerced into doing it. And it was just from the second turnbuckle, but he's Sid.
I know.
Like, he was top heavy. He was
know.
really tall.
He's 6'8" or something like that, 300 pounds.
Most
Most of that muscle was on the upper part of his
like
body.
a good 90% of his muscle was in his upper body.
Yeah.
And he had little stick legs.
Yeah, he skipped leg day a lot.
He did. And this is his quote. I had about a year left of my contract, and I was thinking back then, prior to hurting my leg, what was I going to do as far as wrapping up my career? The only thing I wanted to do was ideally go out in a big pay-per-view like a WrestleMania or something like that, a main event, leave like that, and not come back again. It really would be the retirement match. Instead, he had a 17-inch rod placed in his leg during his 2-hour surgery. For a bit, he used a cane and walk. I remember watching the first time he came back after that was, I think, at that Australian promotion, or was it the Hogan one? I forget what it was. But it was a smaller show. It wasn't like he showed up in WWF like after that.
Well, he did later on.
Well, yeah, later on, yeah. But like in terms of like trying to get his career back on track, which you knew was not going to happen. And I remember him he only came out to do a promo, and he came out with a cane, and it was just sad. It was like, oh man, Sid, that sucks. And it was like 2 years later too.
I know. But then it was, when were they doing the retro Raw stuff?
Wasn't that was it the
It was one of those, because they had a couple episodes where Heath Slater would come out, drop a promo, and some legend would come and beat him up. And one of those, Sid came out.
And one of them was Sid, yeah. Did he give him a powerbomb?
Yep.
Yeah, so he looks fine. I love Sid. Sid's great. Like, he's on his Twitter. He's on the Raw Retro Active, or whatever he calls it, Sid's whatever it is. So he live tweets Raw, basically, and just runs it down every week. But he seems to have like a decent head on his shoulders, for being Psycho Sid.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a difficult one to watch.
Yes.
Now, number one.
One we couldn't bring ourselves to watch.
Couldn't actually. I think I saw like a GIF of this. Don't. What are you doing?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, you're gonna bring it up. I think I saw a GIF of this one where and I just saw like the slip of the ropes, and I stopped watching. It was like, oh, I think I know what that is.
Yeah.
And it was a wrestler by the name of Hayabusa. Big time wrestler in Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, FMW, in Japan.
It was a promotion started by Atsushi Onita. If you remember correctly, maybe a year ago or so, we did a reaction video of a match where it was like an exploding match in the middle of a pool, and there is a segment where Onita takes what looks to be a sickle and rams it into a guy's abdomen.
I think he was the guy taking.
Oh, sorry, yes,
he was the guy taking the sickle.
You're right,
and it was all super fake. But he was Atsushi Onita brought the death match from the States,
from Texas, right?
From it said he saw it during his time in Memphis, so I think it came from Texas to Memphis, and then he took it to Japan.
Okay.
And FMW was it was his brainchild, and they did a lot of hardcore deathmatch stuff. And Hayabusa was a name in FMW. That was primarily where he wrestled, but he wrestled. He had like one match in ECW. He came out here.
Yeah, he wrestled in Mexico for a while. He wrestled in Florida. The WWF offered him a tryout in '95, I want to say.
Right.
But he remained loyal to FMW.
Right. On October 22nd, 2001, at how do you pronounce
Kirkin Hall.
Kirkin Hall, okay. Against an opponent named Mammoth Sasaki. He broke his neck while attempting a moonsault.
Yeah.
Now, all you guys know an Asahi moonsault.
So like a lion salt.
A lion salt, exactly. So if I'm not mistaken with that, you run towards the ropes and you hit the second rope?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so the second rope, in his case, his foot slipped. And, so if you're watching this on YouTube as opposed to listening to it, you run towards the rope, you hit it,
jump off the
back,
rope, and then flip off the rope.
But if you slip, in his case, he went straight back.
Well, I've only seen a still of the moment of impact. His face is on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
His body is perpendicular to the mat.
Yeah.
With his feet behind him.
Yeah.
And he broke two of his vertebrae.
Two of his vertebrae.
And was rendered paralyzed, I believe, from the neck down.
Yeah. And it says here, while waiting for a stretcher to be brought to the ring, not wanting to let everybody down, he asked for the mic, and he says, "All of you, I'm truly sorry. It probably might take a long while to come back, but I want to come back. I think I want to come back, so please don't abandon FMW that I loved at the risk of my life." And 4 months later, FMW went under. He remained active in the wrestling industry post-injury, but he didn't gain the use of his... by 2015, he had actually regained the use of his legs and walked with a cane.
Yeah, he was working backstage. He did some backstage stuff for Dragon's Gate or Dragon Gate, and then he was the executive producer when FMW relaunched in 2015.
Yeah, he unfortunately died in March of 2016 due to a brain aneurysm. So, shortly after he was able to regain the use of his legs.
He was only 47 years old.
Yeah, so just awful, just absolutely awful. And I don't recommend anybody look at it. I'm not joking. I'm not saying this ironically. I saw the beginnings of it, and I think I might have seen that still that you saw too a little while ago, and it's just horrific.
Yeah,
it's really, really bad. And the fact is, the dude was, it's sort of a draws situation. Like we can mention draws here as well.
Yeah. I believe that match, he had a match against D'Lo Brown, and there was D'Lo Brown was doing his running powerbomb, I believe.
Yeah.
Something went wrong.
Yeah.
Draws landed on his head and broke his neck, and I believe he's still paralyzed, at least from the waist down.
Yeah, from the waist down.
I know he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah. But they said he was gonna be a quadriplegic for his entire life. And he's not.
Yeah. As far as I know, that was a match taped for SmackDown that never aired. The Draws one.
Right.
So I don't know if there's any.
I know there are pictures of it that I think I saw pictures of it a very long time ago, and I noticed on a message board thread recently within the last month, because we've been compiling this list for a while now, that somebody else had or somebody on a message board had uploaded them, and you had to click through to get to them, and I didn't do that because I didn't want to see it. But I do remember it just being one of those things where it's like, oh God, that's not good.
Yeah, I think it was an incident or a situation where we woke up the next morning and was reading, I don't know, on one of the dirt sheets that it happened, and it was, it felt awful.
Oh yeah, it was terrible because he I don't know, I have no idea, but he had a great look. He's a really good looking dude, very athletic.
Had some charisma.
Had a lot of charisma. Not sure how far he could have gone necessarily, but there was always the potential there to go pretty far.
Yeah,
they were using him quite a bit. But getting back to Hayabusa, it's just horrible. He ended up using his legs, walked with a cane, and then died at 47. That was horrible. That's just absolutely horrible.
I know.
We got some honorable mentions. I guess you can call them honorable mentions, but some that we are aware of, but we didn't include. Just a couple here. Triple H's quad tears during his match against, it was the 2-man power trip versus Jericho and Benoit. For the tag titles. And his muscle came completely off the bone. Yeah, if I'm correct about that.
And then also Vince, I believe it was during a Royal Rumble, right at the end of it, where he ran down, got into the ring, and tore both his quads.
Yeah. That was actually really, I'm not going to say it's comical, but it was comical to watch.
Because he's sitting in the ring, he can't stand up, and he's berating whoever's left in the ring. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, how am I supposed to take this? And then you said there was one Bob Holly.
Well, there's a couple Bob Holly injuries
Holly was like
we could mention here. There was a botched powerbomb
with Lesnar
that he broke his neck.
Yeah.
And then also he was in a match against RVD in ECW, and there was a table spot that cut his back really bad.
Oh, God. Yeah.
It was a pretty huge gash. And, of course, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Joey Mercury's face. He took a ladder, broke his nose. I think it's orbital bone, and he had to get a bunch of stitches across the bridge of his nose and blood everywhere.
Yeah, and then we got the entire video of bloodiest matches where you have, like, Eddie Guerrero bleeding way too much.
Yeah.
And a bunch more. John Cena and JBL, again, had, like, a really bloody, like, last man, or I Quit match, rather.
Yeah.
But those are kind of like, blood happens. Nobody was really injured,
Apart from the Joey Mercury one, I think most of those, not all of them, but a lot of them were
blade jobs
that
exactly
just kind of got out of hand.
I know HBK versus Jericho was a blade job.
Yeah.
So don't mean to be a bummer. Don't mean to bring it down about number one there, but that's the risk these guys put themselves through. Because it's funny. I was reading Meltzer talking about Meltzer on his Wrestling Observer Radio. Somebody had tweeted at him because Meltzer had called the Sunset Flip powerbomb that Hiromu
that Takahashi did.
Takahashi did on Dragon Lee, and he said it was terrible. And they said, "Why do you call it terrible? This is amazing." And he said, "I have seen so many people get injured," and he said, "I am so surprised more people haven't literally died from that move." He says, "I really wish nobody would do it." Which is interesting because I've never heard that, but just looking at the move,
there's a lot more torque involved with the actual powerbomb than just doing it. I would suspect momentum of running across the ring and jumping out.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, like usually when they do it, it's not like I would imagine that they're probably, when the guy jumps over you sort of go back with them so that you can. It's not like you're holding onto this and you let them whip, But sometimes it looks like that. There's that danger there.
If it's not timed right, if you're absorbing the full torque of the guy doing the move.
Exactly.
In that particular spot where Dragon Lee's head hit the ramp, granted, I think it's just wooden. It's not metal or anything. It was just like a wooden ramp.
Callis was calling it concrete. I was like, it's not concrete.
No, that wasn't concrete.
Got to be some padding
some
there,
sort of wooden or plastic ramp.
It's funny to me because, the chamber hadn't been padded, the elimination chamber this past week.
Yeah.
It hadn't been padded until this one, and so they were able to do more, sort of crazy stuff. It just cracks me up though because it's like padding will only do so much.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like if your head hits hard enough against that, it's still going to get concussed.
Yeah, it's not 6 inches of padding; it's like 1.5 inches or 2 inches.
I know exactly. Yeah, so these guys put themselves at great risk for our entertainment.
Yes.
So you got to be appreciative of that.
Very much so.
And that's it for Count Out. When is this airing? Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday.
Saturday. Okay, so tomorrow we got another one coming up.
Yeah, the top 10 betrayals.
Oh, betrayals.
Or maybe we'll switch it. I don't know. Maybe we'll do that Saturday.
Okay, there you go. We'll see.
One will be up Sunday, one will be up Saturday.
As always, here with Count Out. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.